This week on Heal Yourself Radio, I talked to Dr. Debi Yohn about the psychology of sex. Dr. Debi is a psychologist with specialty training in sex therapy. This episode is very rich in content and tries to remove the taboo feeling we get from openly talking about sex. We'll talk about cultural differences in communication, the effect that pornography has on intimacy, and the secret to a fulfilling sex life. Hint, it has nothing to do with size or position. Enjoy the episode and make sure you subscribe to us on the Insiders Club on healyourselfradio.com and rate us on iTunes.
You're listening to the Heal Yourself Radio Podcast. Unleash the Doctor Within with your hosts, Dr. Jonathan Chung and Dr. Gregory Jean-Pierre.
Welcome to this week's episode of Heal Yourself Radio. Today we have a special guest. We have Dr. Debi Yohn. Debi's originally from Miami. She is a psychologist who graduated from Florida International University. She got her doctorate in psychology from the University of Sarasota. She has a truly international practice. She's lived in Shanghai amongst a number of other cities internationally. She works with clients all over the world, and we're thrilled to have her as a guest on our show. Welcome to the show, Debi.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Well, Debi, I just wanted you to share a little bit about your background with the audience.
Well, I have been fortunate enough to, like you said, I've lived all over the world. Most recently, I was in Shanghai, China for 15 years. And I was the first Western Caucasian licensed psychologist, so I kind of hit a niche. So that was, a good thing for me, and I think a good thing for the community. And prior to that, I lived and worked all across the United States. I spent 6 years in Saudi Arabia. I've also lived in France and Mexico, so I do have that international piece that some people are looking for when they're looking for a counselor. And the niche that I've kind of developed for myself is I've had 40 years experience, so I'm almost like an emergency room doctor. And I've got such a varied experience from following. I was married for 35 years, so I followed my husband all around the world and just kept adding to my resume. So now if a tragedy or something happens, it can be in the business world or personal, people don't know whether to call their friend, their therapist, or their lawyer, so they call me. And one of the more interesting parts that people find, especially when I'm speaking, is that I'm also a certified sex therapist. And I decided to get this credential after doing so much marriage therapy in Shanghai, because with the extra pressure of living abroad and husbands or spouses working long hours, it opened up a lot of issues that I was dealing with in China. Okay,
well, one of the main reasons we had you on the show today is because you gave some very engaging and very fun conversations about the role of sex in healthy relationships. And I think that's something that is really underappreciated. People kind of keep it taboo. They don't like to talk about it. They like to perform the act, and they do things to achieve sex, but they don't understand the ramifications that are involved from a mental health standpoint. And part of what we're here to do today is to dissect that a little bit so people can walk into this and not try to ignore the conversation about sex and how it applies to the health of themselves and their relationships. Can you go ahead and talk about some of the interesting experiences we talked about at the club the other day?
Well, just to give some background, whenever I do an assessment with an individual, or particularly when I'm working with couples, I always, towards the end, after they get to know me a little bit, I always ask them, how the relationship is sexually, because how someone looks at sex and how someone looks at money, those are the two things that tell me something very quickly, about the situation or the couple. And with sex, like I was speaking when I spoke to the group last week, when children are young, they start, they're curious and they ask questions, and parents are often very uncomfortable answering the questions, which I think this already sets the precedent then for how people think and feel about the topic of sex. And sex, it doesn't have to be something that is dirty, probably because of the jokes and, some of the issues that, people can make sex into something that's ugly, but it's not. It's really, the whole idea is for it to be something, very, very beautiful, something that's, an enjoyment to, to everyone. So my recommendation is right off the bat is when your kids ask questions, just answer the question. You don't have to go into such detail that, it overwhelms the kid and it overwhelms you. Just answer the question. And they usually just totter off, and they'll come back in, a few days, a few weeks, a few years with another question. And then just answer the question. And as they get older, then have, very relaxed conversations. I think it helps the parents kind of ease into the sex topic. Back in my day, no one talked about it, and if you were lucky, someone might have handed you a book, but it really didn't, go into in any of the human parts of it. It was more like a science project. But in China, particularly because I've been there the most recently. A lot of times you hear false information, and even we got some questions and from the group last week where one of the questions was why is it that women are not interested in sex, and that was kind of a false conclusion made by that person, because it's not true. I hear as many concerns by women that men aren't interested in sex, but it's all where you are in your life, your lifespan, because I think sometimes our body clocks are off. Women, once they've got their kids raised, they then have the energy and the interest in sex, where men seem to be, these are big generalizations, I realize, but just in general, men are more interested when they're younger. And some women haven't ever really enjoyed sex because they haven't really, enjoyed or had an orgasm, and so they're not interested in, just dealing with the process. So my, suggestion is, we need to make it fun for both parties, not just one. And that means pleasing both, pleasing the woman. And then she might be interested in having more sex.
I think that's a great point. Even when I posted this question and posted about the interview yesterday to my Facebook audience, the topic just gets uncomfortable for people, because I got a couple of people post about, like, are you sure you should be posting about this on your Facebook? I'm just like, I'm just talking about like the psychology of things and mental health. I'm not talking, it's not dirty talk at all.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just, why do you think that is? And why do you think people come into such obstacles when having this type of conversation?
Well, I think we all bring, our family culture with us. We're also bringing our actual culture with us, religious issues. So there's a lot of dynamics that's wrapped around the topic of sex. So I feel like it's time to kind of unravel some of this. When you look at what a big bang 50 Shades of Grey made, to me, it just told me that people are interested. So many people picked up the book that I was surprised as my clients, male and female, and there's an interest in it. And I believe that, there, of course, there's some people would say there's some kink that's kind of wrapped around that particular book, but in some ways, it was, it was good entertainment. It was between two consenting adults. It was pleasing each other. And to me, if it's consented, if both adults are consenting and it's not done with a minor, then what happens belongs to that couple. It doesn't belong to the rest of us to decide what is right and what's wrong.
I think that's a really good point. And for myself, growing up in an Asian household, even though I was pretty much raised American, there's not really too much about me culturally that's Asian, besides a lot of the food that I eat and some of the traditions that we have. I wanted to hear your thoughts, being on both sides, practicing in the United States, practicing in China. Do you mind comparing and contrasting the views of sex in China compared to in America?
Well, I basically worked with Western people in China. So that's one thing I'm not going to know the total inside of the Chinese culture. But I did have some mixed couples where I saw couples if one of the couple was American or Western. So because I didn't want my culture to clash with one of the parties, because I don't think that's fair. I look at the world through Western eyes. At least I've had the experience of living in lots of different cultures, but I'm still basically Western in my thinking. But in the Chinese world that I saw, there is no information as far as even the mechanics of it. I mean, women weren't really educated as far as the pleasures of their sexuality, or even childbirth or menstruation. None of that was really communicated. It's still very much in the dark ages. I think that there's probably an underground sexual type of activity that I wasn't privy to. I'm sure it's there, and so they would probably have a different perspective. But really, I'd say that's still the dark ages, even darker than the U.S.
So in the United States, what do you think is the biggest obstacle towards people having a healthy sexual relationship?
I still think I think it's lack of information, and I think kids are still learning from kids, basically about sex, and they get misinformation. And I have grown men in their 40s, 50s, 60s that think they know it all, and they don't. They really don't understand the female body. And a lot of women have no idea about a man. They know a man has a penis, and that is about it. And they really they just get through the process. I think, like I was again talking last week, the difference that I see between men and women is women can fake. They can fake pleasure. They can fake an orgasm. A man can't. But that kind of makes it can put the man in a bad spot, I think, in some ways. And I think that it's time to get honest. And if a woman is not really receiving pleasure, it's time for her to quit faking it and asking for what she needs. I think it's hard for women to ask for what they need. And women are intricate creatures. Mm-hmm. It's just not like, you whip it out and, have intercourse and everyone has an orgasm. You have to try different positions. It's what frame of mind you're in, what time of day, what time of month. There's a lot of things that play into pleasure.
And what do you think is just some really simple, easy steps that a couple can take as far as improving their communication? Is there any specific verbiage that you recommend people use? Is there a specific topic of conversation that people should engage in just to get the conversation moving?
Well, one thing is the ability to discuss sex or to discuss any difficult subject. I recommend, instead of people being confrontational, it's not a good time to discuss sex when you're disappointed, or if you've just tried to, have sex and it didn't work well. A lot of times that's when people are angry. Well, that's not a time to discuss it. To me, it needs to be when it's in a non-threatening situation, when it's soft talk, when you tell the other person what it is that you like, what feels good, what you don't like. Some people like their hair rubbed. Some people don't like you to touch their head. Some people, like different positions. But if you don't tell your partner, how in the world are they going to know? We expect the other person to be a mind reader, and we just need to quietly, softly share with each other what we like and what we don't like.
Definitely, and that brings up a question that one of our listeners brought up. Is just the topic of how stress can affect intimacy between people, because a lot of people, especially women, it's pretty well documented that when they're in a higher sympathetic state, then of course they have a more difficult time achieving orgasm. What are some tools that you use to help people alleviate the level of stress between each other?
Well, there's so many there can be stress in the relationship, there can be stress in the moment in time. Just like I believe, women can get turned off at the snap of a finger. If a baby cries, or if something occurs, or it could be a comment that they quickly fall out of the mood. There's no way that, they're going to achieve orgasm. So what happens before even being intimate, it plays out in whether or not a person has an orgasm or not. If you're tired, if you're mad, if you're under some type of stress, it's going to play out in your intimate life. So to me, you got to set yourself up for success. The bedroom itself, TV needs to be off. The technology needs to be out of the room. The kids need to be out of the room. We got kids sleeping with the parents all the time. Well, that's not very sexy. Dogs and animals. There's a lot of just common sense things that people are just not, looking at. And what do you look like? People go to bed and they look, they're in old shirts. They don't shower. This is male and female. You got to keep your sexy on, and I'm saying forever. You want to stay sexually attractive, to your partner for the entire relationship, not just, before you have kids. After we have kids, I think people just kind of drop the ball a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you brought up, that I think a lot of people underestimate, is just how you approach going to bed can make a big difference, where you're at that constant stimulus, where if you're the type of person that really, dresses down and dresses in scrubs and things like that when you're getting ready to go to bed, then if that's the ideal time for people to engage in sexual activity, then you just condition yourself and your partner to be unattracted to each other in that prime time moment.
Yeah, we need to pretend we're still dating each other. It's like you need to keep dating your partner for the entire relationship. Take a look at your bedroom. Look at your sheets. Look at the surroundings. Lighting a candle. Clean sheets. Putting some background music on, and every intimate connection doesn't have to include intercourse. Sometimes it's just laying there together, touching, just enjoying being together. That leads to a healthy sexual relationship.
And I read a great quote, I think it was yesterday while I was researching some questions for the interview, and the quote said that if you want to maintain a healthy relationship throughout life, then you should act with your partner as if you're still trying to win them over. And
Absolutely.
as if you never won them over before.
That's right. And it's fun. I think we need to keep the fun in it, because we lose our playfulness. We lose touch with our playful child, that part of our personality, and that's why with 50 Shades of Grey, it brought up, all kind. Some people like to do role play. Some people, like to dress, in certain different scenarios. If that keeps it playful and keeps it fun, and that's what they enjoyed when they were younger, why not? some people are kind of surprised that people in their 80s are still enjoying each other sexually. Well, I think that's the whole idea is, we're sexual beings to the day we take our last breath.
And from your perspective, this is another question from a reader or a listener. Do you feel like that there is a baseline number for the amount of times that people should be having sex on a regular basis?
Now, the only time I see that is when I read probably Cosmo, and I think everybody's lying. But because I think everybody is different, and again, if it's satisfying to each one, then that's the amount of times a week that they should be having sex. Whether it's some people, it might be 2 or 3 times a day. I don't know if that could be, times 7. I say go for it if you can, but most of us don't have that kind of energy or kind of time. That just belongs in magazine articles or for people that are just falling in love. So no, I don't have a magic number. I think it just needs to be what's comfortable for both people, not just one, for both people.
Right on. One thing that I've seen a lot of articles on lately is the effect of pornography on sex life between couples. I've seen some articles that say that it helps improve sexual activity. I've seen others where it actually decreases a man's sexual appetite for his partner. What's been your experience as far as that?
Well, and nothing that I'm going to say is based on any valid research. It's just from what I've seen from clients. If let's say a man has been alone a lot or masturbates quite a bit, then the problem with that is then when they start having a sexual relationship with another person, it will affect their speed of orgasm. They'll orgasm quickly because let's face it, when you're masturbating, the whole idea is to have an orgasm. So you're not really training yourself to pace it so that you can stay with another partner. So a lot of people are looking at pornography, or I think the latest word that's out there is edging, and it kind of, to me, gets in the way of a sexual relationship with another person. So if you've done that quite a bit, or if a person has participated in that activity quite a bit, I think it will affect their interaction with another human being. Now, as far as, light pornography can be a turn on. The heavy pornography, it can scare people. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you see a penis that looks like it's a foot long, that's kind of scary. Who wants to, get turned on by that? And it also sets people up for, thinking that there's something wrong with them. Like guys think that they need to have this huge penis in order to have a successful, sex life. That's not true. The size doesn't matter. It's what you do with it.
That's a great point. Another thing I wanted to bring up is kind of the way that medicine has entered sex now. So talking about things like Viagra and how that has changed the sexual landscape for people as they get older, and even as you mentioned in your talk before, how it's even influenced people younger in age. Right.
One concern that I think is out there is that even with the younger people, they think, if they took a Viagra, sex is good now. With the Viagra, it can be, like fabulous. So they're, always going for, the top, they always want to be a 10, they don't ever want to be like a 7 or 8. And, it's kind of crazy. Because then when they get to be older and then they're going to, maybe need some help with the Viagra or the Cialis or one of the prescription drugs that are out there, is it going to work? We don't know because, we've got generations to go before we're going to see the long-term effect. But with the Cialis and the Viagra, I believe that they're being prescribed without very much explanation, because maybe the doctor's not comfortable, even talking about it. They can write out the prescription. They probably ask the guy, well, how's it going? And the guy goes, oh, it's going good. And then they just move on. The doctor doesn't probe and really ask questions, because I think a guy's going to kind of skim over it. But then if you started asking him more questions, he might, open up that he is having some issues, and discussing it with the doctor. Because when if you're pre-diabetic, or you have high blood pressure, or you're on different medication, it's going to affect with your performance. And I think that that's a valid point to discuss with your doctor, because it could be something that's easily fixed. But just some rules of thumb is, if impotence is kind of an issue, don't try to have intercourse if you've been drinking a lot, if you've had a heavy meal, if you're exhausted. You're just setting yourself up for success, and for no success. And for the women, don't get mad at these guys, because if they're having issues, getting mad at them is not going to help the situation. It's just going to make it worse. This is something that a couple needs to handle together, but they're going to have to be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I see a parallel between women getting stressed out about the fact that if their partner is impotent,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same dynamic almost when a man feels like he can't give his partner an orgasm.
That's right.
So there's these two dynamics going on, and stress seems to make both of those things worse.
That's right. And so you're going to fail is what's going to happen. And then people just quit trying too. And then so they quit having sex, and they start living like roommates, and then it goes down the line, and then one or two, both of them end up being attracted to someone else, and then they can perform with another person because they're on their good behavior.
Right.
So the cycle begins.
And you mentioned, I think you were talking about a story at the talk the other day where someone was going through that type of experience where infidelity started happening, or as a result of the couples not having sex anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a story from Shanghai. Do you remember that?
Well, I've seen it time and time again, and I caution people that first of all, like if a woman doesn't want to have doesn't want to be intimate with her husband, then I ask the woman, well, where do you think he's going to put his sexual energy? What's your expectation? They still, they don't want to be there to be their sexual partner, but then they also don't want the husband to have relations outside the marriage. Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword, and it doesn't really work. So if people are not really paying attention to their sexuality and their intimate relationship with their partner, then it really is a recipe for disaster, because sex is a very natural thing.
Right on. So a couple of just rapid fire questions that I usually ask all my guests on the show. So this doesn't necessarily have to pertain to sex or anything like that. It's mostly about personal development, just general health and well-being. Do you have any specific books that you like to recommend for people, or books that you've enjoyed giving out to people that really improve their lives?
Oh gosh, go on Amazon. There's just so many. I actually tell because I think so many people are out there doing, some type of looking for an answer, and to me the answer is very simple. Because you got a lot of people that you will give them a book and they'll just read what is it, 18 pages I think is what they say most people read a book. To me, the natural way is the best way. So you need to stay healthy. You need to eat right. You need to get out there and get some exercise. And most of all, though, you need to laugh. You need to laugh at each other, laugh at yourself. Laugh at the stresses in your world. And laughter is a stress reliever. But it's just being happy, making happiness a priority, not making a certain amount of money or people are doing this retail therapy quite a bit,
yeah.
and I think that we're missing just true happiness. So I don't have any particular books. I actually push people to read fiction so that they get away from, the stresses of life, and they need an escape that's something different besides technology. I think we're over technical, and I'm just like you. I've got the Mac Air and the Mac Pro and the iPhone and the iPads, but I also put it away, and I take time to enjoy my partner.
Excellent. Are there any specific things that you do for your life and health that not too many people know about, whether it's meditation or I think you mentioned Tai Chi before.
Right. Of course, when I was in China, I have a wonderful Tai Chi master. And when I go back, I usually meet with him every other day when I'm there. So Tai Chi for the calming of the mind. But I'm also a dragon boat racer. So I'm on a dragon boat team out of Miami. And I've just taken up ocean canoeing. So obviously water is it's very calming for me. So I choose things that are involving the water. And just recently I picked up golf just because I like doing something that my partner it enjoys, and that's his primary sport. So we're sharing that. I'm not a good golfer, but I do golf.
Well, you're in Palm Beach. You're in the right place to play the game. I'm a terrible golfer myself, so I can't really speak too much on that.
But I just think we need to push our edges and try things that we haven't tried. And if someone else likes to do something, tag along with them. You might discover something.
One of the questions I just got now actually is about aphrodisiacs. Do you recommend any in particular? What are your opinions on those?
Well, to me, the best aphrodisiac is the words and the actions of the partner that you're with. Because just like I said at the Rotary group, the biggest muscle is in your head. And, people are always looking for something, outside, something to take, something, an herb, some trick. There really is no trick to it. The trick is if you have a healthy body and you have a healthy mind and you have kind words that you share with each other and you take care of your partner takes care of you, that's all we want, is to be loved and adored. If we feel loved and adored, then the sex will follow.
Wow, that's a great statement to pretty much close it out on, because that was basically my last comment, was to see if you had any closing words for our audience, and I don't think we could do too much of a better job than that.
Well, thank you for having me. And if you have any more questions that come later, shoot them over to me. I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, that sounds great. If people want to learn more about you, your practice, do you have any ways that people can follow you, whether it's social media or websites or anything like that?
Sure. I have a website, International Psychologist Dr. And you can always email me at Debi, DEBI, at dryohn.com, dryohn.com. And I have a small elite private practice here in West Palm Beach, but I also do video conferencing sessions all over the world. So,
and if you're in the West Palm Beach area and ever want to meet Dr. Debi or myself, you're always more than welcome to visit us at the Wellington Rotary Club at the Wanderers Club. We meet once a week on Thursdays at 12:30, and you're more than welcome to come by and check us out. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr.
Thank
Debi.
you.
It was a great time, and once we get some feedback and more questions from our audience, and maybe we'll bring you back on and tackle some of those questions.
I would love it. Go forth and be sexy.
Thanks for listening to Heal Yourself Radio. If you like what you hear, show us some love on iTunes by writing a review or by sharing with your friends. We love interacting with our listeners. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/healyourselfradio. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Jonathan Chung. And you could always come to our website at healyourselfradio.com and interacting with us in the comments section. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.